It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
G'day everyone, welcome to episode 17 of Sunday Streams with Trademate Sports, where we answer your betting questions, discuss both new and old betting strategies, talk about how to best use the Trademate Sports software, and welcome on guests from around the betting industry. And as you can see today, no better guests than ever, Pete Ling from Smart Betting Club. How are you, mate?
Wow, what an intro. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, very well, mate. Really pleased to join you on the live stream.
No, it's awesome, mate. We will be going through a lot today, I guess. I've got my own questions for you, but the most important thing is everyone can kind of send through their own questions. So for people who do not know much about SBC or Smart Betting Club, mate, maybe you want to give a quick intro. And if you guys already know quite a lot about Smart Betting Club and Pete, then start firing through your questions and we can get into it, mate. But yeah, quick intro would be superb.
Sure. So Smart Betting Club, we've been around since 2006. Primarily our role is tipster reviews and analysis. So we really go in depth on tipsters. You know, we take like what used to be more of maybe a financial approach, financial analysis approach. We apply that to betting. So we look at all aspects of a tipster's service, mostly performance levels. The only reason someone follows a tipster is to make a profit. So we analyze that. We do all kinds of analysis, looking at, whether it be odds, bookmakers, staking plans, whatever it be. Then we look at things like customer service, the pricing, betting banks. Crucially, also look at odds availability. If a price that's quoted, how long that lasts, or if a line moves very quickly, that's the type of thing we want to get into, both the theoretical and the practical aspects. So that's the main reviews. We then do follow-up reports, which kind of track the ongoing performance of those services we review, and then obviously we recommend a bunch in what we call our Hall of Fame. So that's the main gist of what we do. And then outside of that, we also do like anything that's connected to making money betting. So whether bookmaker stuff, bookmaker reviews, or using software, VPNs, or psychology of betting, that's a huge one. Money management. So anything that's connected to helping people bet sharp, bet smart, like that's what we're here for.
Yep, terrific, mate. And I mean, I think people would have heard a lot about you already. We've had you on the podcast about a year and a half ago. So, for those who have been around for a while, you'd know quite a bit about Pete and Smart Betting Club already, mate. But we'll fire into some of the questions. I've just got one come through here. Oh, here we go. Daniel Chill Gaming, he says, what do you think about Wager Talk? Average? I assume he means average or good?
I don't know. I have no idea what Wager Talk is. Sorry, Daniel. Great start.
Terrific, mate. I think there's some kind of I've heard of them very briefly. I think they might be similar to other I think they're like a YouTube channel, or maybe they're maybe they actually have a television show in America. I think they just do tips and tipping shows and stuff like that. Maybe I don't know, if I'm trying to think of something similar, but I think they're quite popular. I'm not too sure, but yeah.
Yeah. So at SBC we're more European focused, I guess, at the moment. We have plans to kind of branch out into North America because it's obviously legalized in so many states now, even in Canada and other places that previously betting was illegal. But in general, like the US tipster space, it seems very different to the European, the UK version. I was looking at a site the other day, and it was, I think someone was asking my opinion, and they were charging like $100 just for one pick. And
yeah,
it's exorbitant prices like that. So I'm always very wary of US stuff. Obviously, this is obviously some kind of YouTube channel discussing it, but it just doesn't seem as mature a market, in terms of the professional side of what we look at. So yeah, I can't really. Maybe I can research Wager Talk and get back to you, Daniel.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? They seem to have lots of actual television shows. Like I've heard of ESPN have got actual, shows that they have every week talking about betting and on, whatever the sports, the American football or basketball and stuff like that. And it's just, in Australia, we don't have anything like that. You have to go to YouTube for stuff like that. And I think it's the same in the UK and Europe too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It seems to be more of an American thing, like talking, hours and hours to chat just about maybe betting lines or very specific games. Obviously, you get a lot on Sky and what have you, but not perhaps to the same level of detail. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, mate. I've got some questions for you. I'll kick this one off. Let me go. Yeah. So this is an interesting one, and I've noticed it just either following tipsters myself or people asking me questions. And I think one of the things that people get lost in is obviously when a tipster like quotes their price, they say bet Arsenal at 2.0, let's just say. A lot of tipsters give a minimum price, but I assume, they might say, but you can back them at 1.9. They'll say, yeah, back them at 2, but still back them at 1.9 if you can get that. But I assume all of their records are based off their top price that they give out. And so if you're talking about someone with a 5% ROI or something like that, if you take their minimum price on everything, you're probably going to be like, neutral over time, or, maybe a slight winner or a slight loser, if you get what I mean. So do you think there's enough, enough knowledge around that? Because it just seems like it's kind of like a loosely thrown out thing that a lot of tipsters will just be like, minimum price is this, but that's my top price. And people are obviously going to be happy to go and back that 1.9.
Yeah, so I think you talk to most tipsters. I've done a few podcasts, and not as many as you, Alex, but I'm getting there. But I speak to various experts, and they're all like betting on a diverse range of sports and markets, but they all have one thing in common. That's the idea of value. So you're taking 8-1 about a bet that should be 7-1. It's that kind of concept. So inevitably, what they find is they price up a game, they price up a match. So they know what the true odds should be. So that often, maybe there's a little bit of margin there, and just above that is their minimum profitable odds. So what I do find is that increasingly, if they do quote a base price, and that's really good to see. They're quoting take 2.1, but don't take any lower than 2.0. To stop people going all the way down, because people, there is a misconception that just take any price. This is a great bet. It's not guaranteed to win. It's just a value bet at those odds that are quoted. So it's an important point to make clear that it's not a guarantee a bet's going to win. And so certainly adding that in is really useful. I see more and more doing that, because especially in markets where there could be a lot of movement. If you're jumping on 30 minutes too late, you don't want to. You're going to question, aren't you? Should I take this price? The original price is gone. Is this still value? So by having that in an email, it's useful. The one exception to the rule is some of the free tipsters that are out there. Like there's a UK guy called Hugh Taylor who's very good on horse racing. He tips for free on a site called At the Races. His ROI to his advice price is ridiculously good. It has been for years and years, like 30%. But because he's free and he's so popular, like the bookmakers just slash his odds straight away. He's putting up 16s and everyone's getting 10s. And I questioned to him, like, why don't you put minimum odds on? And it's like, well, the bookmakers, because he's free, they'll just put the minimum odd, their odds just below his minimum one. So if he says, don't take any lower than 10, I'll make it 9. So he's tried that. So yeah, that's the only real exception to the rule. But most of the time it's really good practice, because most tipsters have an idea of what the true odds should be. So there should be no real reason for them to not put that in, or some kind of minimum odds to take in any tip they put forward.
Yeah. Do you not think that they should maybe, I don't know, put something in brackets every time, or something that just says like my record is off my top price, if you get what I mean? Because I guess there could be people like, I've had times where I live in Australia, so I could be asleep the whole night and wake up to a tip from someone, and it's been 8 hours or whatever, and the only chance I have of getting on ever is the minimum price.
Yeah, it should be in there. It depends. Sometimes you've got different strategies where there's a high volume of bets, and maybe it's just not practical to put that out. But generally, yeah, where possible, if you're putting out a small number of bets each day and it's manageable to put a minimum price, because that's exactly the point. You're in a different time zone, but it might be somebody is working shifts, or somebody is just unavailable for meetings or whatever it is. Just life gets in the way. So tipsters that allow flexibility with people to bet a bit later and still get and understand what the odds should be are really valuable.
And man, another question, I guess it's kind of along the same lines, is it's really interesting that like I've just been on Twitter the last couple of weeks or so, and I actually noticed that it's a good sign, and there's a lot more tipsters out there that actually quote their closing line value, or they kind of mention if they've beat the market or not, or either way, like it's just, I think it's, even though most people don't care about CLV, the people that follow like most people that follow tipsters probably don't care too much. They more so care about getting winners. I think it's just a good, like, if you're just putting that to the side every time and mentioning that on the side, it's kind of a good thing, because it gets people's minds thinking that, oh, okay, why is this guy talking about beating the market, or stuff like that. Do you think there should be, I mean, obviously, like when you're doing your reviews, you're tracking their closing line value and stuff like that, but it seems that if you go on something like Twitter or something and someone's putting up their results for the month or the week or the weekend, that there's never really any mention of, like, it's always, win, loss, push. There's never like, it's never like, I mean, I guess the way I look at things is I couldn't give two shits, basically, that if you won or lost on the weekend, it's all about whether you beat the market or not. So how do you, I don't know, what do you think about all of that, and like how you think that space is going, and whether you think that, maybe tipsters should track and publish their CLV more regularly?
Yeah, they should publish, odds availability, how the odds move. There's some good tipsters, especially in the racing world, where odds movements are very swift, and obviously there's issues with restrictions, but more apply there. Where some tipsters actually do, they log their prices at different points. That's something we do per standard in our reviews. We do a big data sample. We look at like 15 minutes, 60 minutes, closing line, maybe sometimes a day later if it's like a golf tipster tipping up a few days before. So yeah, we explore all of that. So, but it's great to see. I don't think Twitter's the best place for tipsters. Like you say, you get a lot of short-termism. Look what I did in the last 10 days. Well, that's not particularly helpful if you're 10 days prior to that you made a bigger loss. And that's generally what happens. They're cherry picking, the form that suits them and the story that makes them look more potent than they actually are. So, and there's some good sites out there, like shout out to BetStamp, they're doing some stuff in the States, and whereby they're you can log your bets, and they're trying to help professionalize and increase education and awareness on like CLV or, line shopping or whatever it is, to make sure there's a log of bets and people can compare to CLV, they compare to different metrics and look at, thousands of results from a certain tipster rather than, last week. Because like that gets my goat too, I get some people say, look at me, I'm so good. I've been, I've had a phenomenal August. Now, well, how was June and July, and very often it's just not up to scratch, and they think, oh yeah, but my 3 months overall have been great. I'm like, that's 3 months, that's nothing in the grand scheme of things. Come back when you've got 3 years, or but even longer if needs be. So yeah, it's good to see, and I think there's always going to be that element of people that just kind of give their baseline stats and just kind of try and get away with what they can and attract people. So the more that we can educate and inform people and give them some really, it's not difficult, some of the terms we're talking about, some of the key concepts are really quite simple, and if we can just show people what they mean and demystify them and explain them, then I think it's just going to help build a bigger community of informed bettors.
So you get many that approach you to be verified, or whether it's vice versa, like that have already got all their stats there of their CLV and everything like that?
Yeah, you do. I do find more and more people come to me without, like, sometimes you get people just on a whim saying, I want to try. And generally, like, that's really, they never go too far. It's generally the sites that are established and kind of understand what they need to do as a professional service. So they have a website, they keep results, and the more detailed the results and the more honest and transparent they are, and the more they already have answers to the questions that I would ask, the more likely it is they're going to be a service that is going to be one that people are going to be interested in for the long term.
All right. Daniel Chill Gaming is back. He says, question to Alex. This is not all about me, guys, so please send in some questions.
The Alex show.
Did you get the insane good price on Bayern Munich this weekend? I couldn't believe it was around 2.15. Sorry, mate, I don't follow the Bundesliga too much, so yeah, I didn't at all. You a fan of the Bundesliga, Pete?
I'm a fan of any league that could turn me a profit, Alex. So
Funny
I
that.
will bet. I will bet on Tiddlywinks. I will bet on the German 10th division if there's such a division. If there's money to be made, if there's an angle to be had. Yeah. So I do enjoy football. Like definitely, that's a big sport. But it's another point that I was thinking about the other day. Someone was asking me. It's disconnecting, if you like, the sport that you like to bet upon, or sorry, the sport that you like the most versus the sport that you bet on the most. It's not necessarily going to be the same. Take a sport like NFL, it's back today, and it's hugely popular, but it's damn difficult to beat. I don't know what Trademate's ROI in NFL is. Alex, you probably
geez,
know.
yeah. I mean, I all I know, I just started doing some. I did some like big data tool simulations of our results, and yeah, it's very. There's just certain markets like the spread and stuff like that where we haven't done that well, but then you look at over unders and we've been doing quite well. So it's hard to tell too, because we more so track sharp bookmakers like Pinnacle.
Yeah.
But then over the years, from what I've heard from professional bettors in America who bet the big US sports, is that they've kind of, the limits of Pinnacle have decreased significantly. Yeah. So they've kind of moved their action over to BetCris. So, I mean, I'm assuming, I mean, Pinnacle's still very sharp, obviously, when it comes to those major US sports. But if you want to, I guess, be as sharp as possible, then you'd probably be looking at something like BetCris. But yeah, I mean, it's really, it's crazy though. Like it sounds like everyone, maybe it's just a round one thing or a match day one, whatever they call it. But yeah, I was listening to a few people who were saying a few days out from the season, like 3 days out from the season, that like the lines won't move from here. Like they're already like in position. Mm-hmm. Like there's no way they're going to move from here, which is crazy to think, because if you look at something like football, it's it's we're talking an hour before kickoff, like when the teams come out. Yeah, you can't really. The market is not efficient until maybe a couple of minutes before the game starts.
Yeah, it's the same with like horse racing. Until the money comes in and so many late variables come into question, it's probably not the same for NFL. I'm not a big watcher or fan of NFL. Cards on the table and that one. It's just not a sport that's ever engaged me. But my point was, like, some people are huge fans. I totally appreciate that. They live for Sundays, and they live for the watching NFL. But it's very difficult to make a profit on. From my experience and talking to other people and the tips I've explored, sometimes there's some of the side markets that people are making a profit on, but the main ones, like the handicaps and the spreads, whatever, they're just the over and unders. They're just not very easy to profit from. So it's disconnecting the fact that you like a sport and you love watching it from the fact that you should bet on that and make a profit. Like my favorite sport, like, is, I can't believe I'm telling Ozzy this, my favorite sport is cricket. Alex. Well, I can't tell you. No cricket chat, Ashes.
Yeah, we'll see the numbers dwindle down pretty quickly when we start talking about cricket.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let's move on. But my point was, I can't remember the last time I bet on it. Right, it's my favorite sport. Like, I love watching it. Well, the last time I bet, I can't tell you. But I will bet on sports. Maybe my interest level is lower, like a golf or tennis. But actually, you do start to appreciate sports a bit more when you bet upon them. But yeah, it's like disconnect. Don't always think that some of the most popular sports, like football, NFL, like NBA, I guess, they're all really, really difficult because there's so much money traded on them to profit from the main leagues or the main markets. So it's worth. That's just a point I was thinking about earlier this week.
Well, probably a good follow-on question from that is that you get lots of people now that the markets are so big and efficient, especially in America now that the legalization's growing. People are, I guess, moving into I just hear like more, I guess, bigger chat about player props and betting those kind of markets instead. Do you have many people that you've been proofing that have just been doing player props bet? Because I guess that's a whole different ball game in terms of like metrics you can look at, especially with like beating the market and stuff like that. Like that kind of data of beating the market's probably not as readily available as like some of the bets on Asian handicaps or 1x2s and stuff like that.
Well, across the board, whatever sport it is, generally, if you start going into the smaller markets, whether it be smaller leagues or some of the side bets and some of the main leagues, that's where you're going to find the profit. The quid pro quo to that is you're not going to find the liquidity. You're not going to find it as easy to get your bets down. You could get, obviously, you said the limits at Pinnacle are now smaller, but you can get on with BetCris. But, you can generally get on a lot on some of these main markets without huge issue. You're not really going to get restricted very quickly betting on Premier League games, if at all. But you are, maybe if you're making a profit in League Two or the National League or the Spanish second division, you might have more of an issue like when you start to go down the pyramid. So it's trying to find that trade-off between a market where you can make an edge, but also a market where you've got lots of options and you're not going to attract too much attention because you're taking some very sharp bets where they're not really that interested. So yeah, it's NFL. Like has been some people doing stuff like anytime touchdown scorers, for example, bets like that. But it's on futures, things like that too, and a bit of a mix of some of the main bets and mix of some of the side bets, like say touchdowns and stuff like that. But generally, yeah, it's a very tough nut to crack, that one, I'm afraid. So, but it doesn't stop millions and millions of people betting on it every week, it seems.
Yeah. Have you started to move more into the American market now? There are more tipsters you're proofing now that are from America?
Not really. No, I'm trying to kind of explore it a little bit. It's a big market, obviously, and there's a lot of established sites already within it. But it doesn't seem to have the, in the European, the UK side of it, there's a lot of information that you can gain, you can access, and you can learn about, and you can find a lot of professional sites and well-run places where you can get informed information, whether it be SBC or Trademate. You've got your great blog and you do all your podcasts, and there's lots of other resources like that. I feel like there's less in the US and there's more, in terms of maybe the more scammy kind of stuff going on, and people are willing to pay ridiculous amounts of money and maybe just less educated on betting and mathematics and bankroll management and just simple stuff like that. So it's just, I'd love to do more on it, but it's a vast country, and there's tons of stuff, betting wise, whether it be Wager Talk that I've not heard of or something else.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, guys, keep sending through your questions. I'll keep rifling questions at Pete, but if you've got anything on your mind, any questions about tipsters, or the man knows everything about betting, so you can ask him anything, and he'll be keen to answer. My next question, and I think this is a really interesting topic and kind of something that it frustrates me a little bit, but I'd love to get your thought on it. People who say, like, why do you sell your picks if you're winning yourself? I won't give you my opinion on that question, but I'll let you go first, and we can go discuss it after that.
Yeah, well, it's a simple supply and demand question. People sell picks are answering a solution to a problem. The problem being people don't know how to make a profit betting. To do so, to make a profit betting is really hard. Very small percentage of people actually do, and then an even smaller percentage actually make a significant sum of money. And it's no shame to not be able to do well at betting. You need the skill element, and that's very difficult to come across. Often that's maybe you played poker for years, or you worked in a trading department. And you've learned from that, and it's taken many hours of trading or many hours of working with other people to understand. And often, as hard work, there's a lot of hard work and time that goes into it. So that skill and time element means that it rules it out for a lot of people who don't have either of those things. So therefore, people come to look for tipsters to help them, and it's just that solution to that problem. And people can debate it as much as they want. It's not going to go away. So it's about making the market, more professional and providing platforms to give people education and information that helps them be a better without, taking advantage of them, and to to stand against bookmakers, because we all like to pick a fight with bookmakers, but rightly so. They're a greedy bunch and generally fairly unregulated, and they take advantage of bettors. Whether it be delaying withdrawals or whatever it is. So there's a lot of need to help inform bettors. So people are just always going to pay for tips. And the other thing I'd say, Alex, is one of the other questions, I don't know if there's a follow-up one that you're going to say, but people say, why don't they just bet them themselves? And that's
more what I was getting at. Anyway, keep going.
No, sorry.
No,
and inevitably people do, like people I know that run these services do bet themselves, but generally it becomes a limit what you can get down, or what you're comfortable to get down, or what you can get down. So, and also the betting income is not linear. You could make $5,000 one month and then lose it the next, and make $5,000 the third month. So that doesn't really help you. It's not a very stable way of generating an income. So sometimes people, if they're already doing the work, people can get their bets down and they get good volume down, then why not sell it? Builds them a business, gives them maybe more of a stable income, and they're building something long term, more sustainable for them. Because you never know with betting. You might get closed off, you might get your accounts done, and then it becomes tricky to get down. So having a bit of a business that can help take advantage of your skills and the expertise you've learned, I don't think there's much wrong with that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the stupidest arguments ever. It's like, why do you sell your picks if you're winning with them yourself? It's like, well, I mean, because I can make more money by doing that. Like even if they were betting them, all of their bets, it doesn't matter if they're betting them or not. Like we're talking about a stable income here in an environment that is just about the most unstable job you could have in the world, which is just betting your own stuff, by yourself with, whatever bookmakers you have. But I think, like, especially someone that's like, imagine if you just started betting, but someone that maybe has like a really low risk tolerance, or they just have a really small bankroll, or maybe they just don't ever want to have a big bankroll, and they just want to be betting $100 or $200 every time. Like, those people can't make a full-time living from sports betting. So why not supplement? I don't see the argument. I mean, I understand, like, if you got someone like a Tony Bloom or a Matthew Benham, that's just like, they can just go to the Asian markets and put down as much as they're betting the big markets, Asian handicaps and over unders, like, but they're such an anomaly. They're like the 0.1% of the world. So for people that are have got a small bankroll, and I mean, that could be like their way of supplementing their bankroll growth is by selling their stuff. And it's not like, people have to buy the picks. Like you said, it's kind of a supply demand thing. If people don't want the picks, then they won't buy them. So it's not like it's I don't know. I think it's a stupid argument, mate.
Well, I think there definitely is an element of the industry, which is rogue, where people do what they can and try and rip you off and rip off customers and make false promises and just be deceitful in general. So that's probably where it comes from. But there is still a growing element, I dare say, which professionalizes it, where you've got well-run businesses and well-run and likable people who are professional and good customer service, whereby they are selling their advice for the reasons we outline, and that they shouldn't all be lumped together. It's like, not all estate agents or realtors are all charlatans, or not all lawyers are all sharks. It's just like in many walks of life, you get some areas of professionals have a bad reputation, and that's not to tar everyone with the same brush.
Yeah. I've got Anthony Kaminskas messaging me here. He's wondering how to comment on the stream, but
I have those questions.
He's a bit of an old timer, so maybe Anthony, you can send your questions through on my phone here if you like, mate, or you can, I don't know, I guess you just go to the comment section on YouTube. You can do it like everyone else does it, mate. We've got Chris Lewis here. He goes, "Hi, I've literally just started following Trademate in the past week. I've been arbitrage betting full time for a long time, and am used to the account restrictions, but it seems just impossible to keep any accounts open following the Trademate bets. I'll be trying to operate solely using Betfair Exchange for my bets. Are there any other outs for the UK punters with sharp bookies?" You're probably best asking you this, mate. Like, are there any sharp options for UK bettors out there?
Not officially, I would say. There has been a few that have tried and then failed. Black Type spring to mind. They tried to do like a guarantee of some kind. He did it for a little while in a blaze of publicity, and it didn't work. Inevitably, you need legislation for all bookmakers to allow sharp punters to get on, otherwise one company does it, just get filled in. So they tried, and a few other people have tried, like some other guarantees, etc. Just really not well used, not well advertised. So there are some options. I know Pinnacle on official like license in this country, but I read some articles. I think it was, I can't remember the website, maybe Smart Sport Trader, where they were talking about using the sport market, and there are some available, but like there is a question mark over how safe they are to use from, and also the legality of using them. So I don't recommend them. I can't, because I officially I'm not sure if they're allowed to trade or allowed to engage with UK customers. Plus, even if you did, there has to be a question mark of how safe are your funds. So unfortunately, no, since Pinnacle left and the high fees that the UK regulator wanted, it seems, for them and others to operate. It's not been appealing to people to get down, but some people are able to do it. So definitely, I think it's Smart Sport Trader. Have a look. I think Sport Market Pro, I think they referenced them, and maybe a couple other companies that are willing to take UK customers, but I don't use them myself.
Oh, that's good. Because last time I checked Sport Market Pro, at least when I was living in Europe, that they didn't accept UK customers, but obviously maybe that's something that's adapted lately.
It might not be them. It might be another one. Maybe you confuse them. Is it FODs or someone like that? Yeah.
I think I might have. Is it not? Is it Asian Connect? Or I could be talking. I don't know.
Yeah, that's one. But again, Alex, it's a grey area, and there's question marks over the the regulation, the legality of using them, and the safety of your funds. So I can't recommend you go check it out. But there are some sites out there, some reputable sites that have put some stuff out there. But it's not something I felt confident enough to advise people on.
Yeah. All right. And yes, Anthony has phoned in his question because he can't figure out how to use the comments section. So here we go. He goes, question for Peter. Can you tell us about the origins of Smart Betting Club? When did it start? Why? How quickly you got it off the ground, etc., etc. And he's got a question for me here too. He says, do you dye your hair? Which is just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what is going on about this. This is all natural, mate. It's all beautifully natural. But maybe you can go, mate. Answer Anthony's question.
Yeah, so I started at the time with a business partner, and we set it up with the viewpoint of applying like some of the financial, the way you read reports on stocks and shares and trades and stuff like that. He came more from that background, so he was doing charting with candlesticks, all this kind of financial modeling, and he just I was the one who was more interested in betting, and then from that we built up the Smart Betting Club. We actually saw some a similar review site, and I was using some tipsters at the time who were doing quite well with one called Equine Investments, who's still going, and I knew which ones were good and which one weren't so great. And I remember reading this newsletter, and they were selling some product that I knew was just flawed, but they were promoting it to the higher heavens. And I did some research. It's clearly they were getting a kickback from publishing a positive review about a product, even though it wasn't great. So all these things combined, and then we set up the Secret Betting Club, then became Smart Betting Club, and it's just snowballed from there. Really, we didn't know what the demand would be, what people would be interested in, and it quickly developed a bit of a platform. And the independent model, we had that from day one, and the goal has always just been to help people with their betting. We were doing it, and I am doing it, still doing it, and still invested in it, and still interested in it. It intrigues me, and I've always loved numbers. I've always loved stats, probability, and the psychology of betting, and it's just grown from there with that goal to help people. So does that answer Anthony's questions, do you think? Just the head I won.
Who knows, mate? He'll send through a telegram soon, mate, and let me know how good it was. No, it's very interesting. When you guys got started, were you kind of the first, one of the first out there in terms of proofing tipsters, or were there a few other players around already?
Yeah, there's been a few. Like Racing Index is still around, I think. Racing Indexes was more automated, so it didn't allow the flexibility that we could provide. We would you'd have to go to raise an index and log a bet, etc. Whereas you could send it through in a spreadsheet or an email, and we'd be able to track it through that. So that gave us a bit of a heads up on that, advantage on them, that flexibility. And even now, I get people saying I want to proof by Telegram, or some people want to proof, by Discord or email. So having that flexibility as the market adapts is important, because Discord, for example, is growing in popularity for you're providing betting advice. It's a direct way to communicate with people. Like Telegram is definitely growing in popularity. Emails being a little bit unreliable, and Telegram giving a push message to your phone a little bit easier than maybe an email account where you're going to get all your emails coming through with a push. So yeah, it's got you just have to evolve, like just with betting itself and what you bet upon. It's just adapting the business as people prove in different ways.
Yeah, nice, mate. Chris Lewis is back. He says, when betting with the exchanges and a price edge is suggested in a low liquidity market, are you better off dripping a stake in, or just trying to match it off ASAP? Do you do much trading, mate, and experience in this kind of realm of things?
Not trading, not to trade a profit. I just place try and get the best price for my bet. It depends if it's low liquidity. Is it going to build up, or is it just going to be low liquidity until kickoff? Talking about like golf markets, like I do a lot of golf. I can speak from that. Like on a Monday evening, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon from the European Tour events, you might get very little liquidity especially in the place markets, even the win market. You've got 140 golfers, and you've got maybe 50 grand traded. And so it's not much per golfer, maybe a little bit more traded. And then, so I do find there's big gaps between, the back and lay. And if you compare the prices with what's on odds checker or what should be about right, you can sometimes see people just taking silly prices. So if you wait on that market, then you'll inevitably get the prices that generally you want. Sometimes you'll get a little bit more on one, maybe a little bit lower on some others, depends on the support in the market. But it needn't be, you need to wait until the event starts itself, just by being a little bit more patient as more money flows into the market and it becomes more efficient. It's got, the right overround for the number of outcomes for that market. So yeah, it depends, low liquidity one, it's if it never improves in liquidity, it's a tricky one. It's chicken and the egg. What do you want to do? Maybe you want to take both sides. You want to bet a little bit early, bet a little bit in the middle, bet a little bit at the end, and just build up over time and get an idea of when the optimal time to bet is. I've done that myself. I've been doing that myself with golf. You're just keeping a record of when I bet and what odds I get, and then comparing to see, what's the optimal time? Is it midday on Wednesday, or is it 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night? What's going to be the best time to place a bet? And generally it's you have to judge it market by market.
Yeah, no, interesting, mate. Chris also said, I've noticed that the Asian suggestions get hovered up quite quickly. What is the minimum edge you would suggest if paying a 2% commission? I guess this is quite Trademate related. I'm just trying to understand the actual question. I don't understand what you mean by Asian hovered up quite quickly. What is the minimum edge you would take?
Handicaps?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if you're paying a 2% commission, it's hard to say because all the markets are just completely different. I spent with betting the exchanges using Trademate, Chris, I'd just spend a lot of time on the big data tool and seeing what's been working, because it's going to be different for each market, whether it's recommended leagues or non-recommended leagues, odds type markets, all that kind of stuff. So you're probably going to have to spend a decent amount of time on and sports too. Like, there's some sports we've got absolutely no sample size for. So yeah, mate, spend some time doing some research. I know it's not fun, but it's definitely worth your time, because you don't want to be entering a market where it might be a bit tough, because the exchanges are just, I don't know what you think, Pete, but like when you're just backing, if you're just treating an exchange like you would a normal sports book, it's kind of a completely different market, isn't it? Because everyone's kind of there for different reasons.
Yeah, and you've got to be aware of what your value odds are and the impact of commission on it. I know Smarkets, there's a 0% commission offer. I think you join, I can't remember the website, one of the match betting sites, and you can sign up through that, and you just have to maintain your subscription to them. You get 0% commission. So if Chris is worried about 2%, and you should rightly be, because it doesn't sound much, but it's like when financial advisors, they say, "Oh, invest with us and you'll only pay 2% commission." It doesn't sound much, but they know it's a lot, especially when you get to big sums of money and you're trading a lot. So yeah, check out this markets one, and Betfair has not got. Betfair was down again yesterday, wasn't it? They're struggling to make many friends at the moment, and their outage doesn't help. So.
Yeah, no, I heard about that. What about proofing tipsters? That this is one of my other questions I had for you. People that if you've got a tipster coming to you that's got a huge, let's just say they beat the market by 10%. I know that's bloody huge and probably unrealistic, but let's just say they're beating the market by 10%, but they've got an ROI of 1% or something like that. Maybe they've got a decent sample size, not too big, not too small. Like, how would you approach proofing them? And like, would you be happy to, I guess, proof a tipster like that and say, yeah, we recommend these guys 100%, even though maybe the ROI is very, very small, but you can see that, maybe over time, because they've been betting the market so well, that they're going to be, profitable long term. Because, I mean, it's probably going to be quite hard for you to argue that point to the uneducated sports bettor that, like, this person's not really making that much money, but we've verified this person.
Yeah, so you often find, what you actually find is more people tips that are overperforming. It's like that survivorship bias where you get 1,000 guys trying to make a profit, and you're just going to get a proportion of them that are profitable just by luck. So generally you get those guys who start really well and then drop down. So it's rarer to get someone that's kind of underperforming like that, doing really well, or getting a lot of traction, I suppose, from an interest. It's tricky. You just need to. We do a lot of the what I call advanced tipster analytics, run the Monte Carlo simulations. So that helps with some advanced outputs, like p-values. We're looking at like risk reward, capital risk, dispersion factor, Sharpe ratios, things like that, which help provide an informed opinion. And comparing like the Monte Carlo millions and millions of results and examples with what's achieved live, you can generally get a sense of if what we've seen so far is better than what we can see long term, and the opposite as well, if like they're underperforming. There's one that springs to mind actually. It's called Wisdom of the Crowds, and you may have seen it. It's like Joseph Buchdahl's theory or his approach, and then there's a guy who's been following it in practice. And I think the theory was it should make 5%, but then for the longest time it was at like 2-3%. And then obviously, when you factor in the cost or I think it was like 2% charged off the top of it for using it. And then it bumped up, and it's now at 5% over, I don't know, over only 20,000 bets. But yeah, you got a decent-ish sample size, but it was still massively underperforming. So with stuff like that, it's just about running the stats, and then generally it's about keeping patient and just seeing what happens long term, to see if that edge manifests itself. Because you're really not going to recommend something until you see it manifest itself, because there could be something else that is warping things in some way that you're not aware of. So you never want to recommend something until you actually see it on paper and you actually see those results come through.
What about the other, I guess, scenario where you've got someone with a very high ROI? Let's say it's a huge sample size, 10,000 bets or something ridiculous like that, which you probably don't come across. But let's just say a 10% ROI over 10,000 bets, but they let's just say they got negative CLV, or on a big market like Asian handicap, over under these kind of markets. How would you approach that?
Yeah, you don't see too many with like a huge sample size like that. I think there's some examples. I think is it Nishikori, the tennis guy, who's been spoken about. And there's a few others, I think, over time that I can't recall who they are, but I remember seeing some where like there was a bit of a query over that for that reason. You don't see too many, but yeah, it's sometimes you get those outliers, don't you, where it just doesn't resonate. With CLV as well, it really depends on the market you're betting within. So we'll talk about NFL and backing on the handicaps, or backing over unders in football markets. They're just popular bets, and they're great for CLV. But when you get markets with many different entrants to it, like a golf market or a horse race, sometimes it's not as efficient a comparative tool. So it really does depend on the market. And like the Trademate markets, that's absolutely where you're going to use CLV. But I imagine if you got involved with some of those other sports, it would be less meaningful. So yeah, it's tipster to tipster.
Yeah. Okay. What about a soccer tipster then that was just tipping over unders? Then how would you approach it? Decent doesn't have to be 10,000, but a big sample size where they've got a big ROI, but they've got no closing line value at all.
Yeah, it'd be unique. Like I said, we have seen a few, and then you have to question why that is, and you just raise that as a question, and you want to see long term if there's any reason for that. It could be like they're tipping in, like they say, less liquid markets. Maybe they're tipping in, not going into the big markets where there's a ton of money, and CLV is really useful because it's such an efficient market. But if they're going into smaller markets, which inevitably you find with like football tipsters, because it's very hard to make a profit, like betting in the Premier League or even the Championship. Any of those top leagues, it's damn hard to make more than maybe a couple of percent ROI at best. So inevitably you find the tipsters focus on, I don't know, smaller leagues like a Dutch league or something like that, whereby maybe there's not as much money, and therefore that could be one reason. That certainly could be one reason. But there probably comes a point where you think, I can't recall seeing it, but where you go, I've got a huge data sample and it's just not, it's profitable, but we're not seeing like the edge on the closing market. Like it's a bit of a conundrum, like with the tennis guy. It's just a conundrum why that is the case. And yeah, it's beyond most of us to work that one out, I think.
Yeah, well, the tennis market's just, I mean, Nishikori has been great in the sense that I feel like he was, one of the reasons like everyone kind of found out that the tennis market's just a weird, inefficient market because you can have such a big sample size, but and not be beating the market and still do quite well. But no, mate, you've answered most of my questions here today, so that's been terrific. Anyone else that's got any questions for Pete, send them through. But maybe in the meantime, you can kind of tell us, are there any plans coming up for SBC? Any new projects coming up that you want to mention to everyone?
Well, it's just more of the same in terms of reviews. We've got some really good reviews coming up. We're seeing more and more sites which are a bit like Trademate, where it's where we're seeing it's not so much traditional tips. It's more like a platform and a tool where you can use it and generate the bets when you're ready, or for the accounts that you have, or for the risk profile you have. And they're really useful because everyone's circumstances are different, and you can tailor it to suit you. So there's a bunch of stuff on that. We've done a lot on golf and in the past, and we've got more to come because today actually we had a couple of big wins of some of the free tipsters we have on site on golf, the 1 and 2. And we've got a few more sites that have been proven for a while that have got a really good golf record. We've got a free golf tipster. Doesn't work with us, but we've kind of uncovered them. They've got a tremendous record. One of the best ones out there is Ben Coley from the Sporting Life. He's had a phenomenal year. He's had a phenomenal 4 or 5 years since we've kind of been tracking him. And he's superb, and he's the type of guy who could probably charge an absolute fortune for his advice if he went solo from Sporting Life. And so there's plenty of really good reviews to come up, and it's just really encouraging to see so many new sites, well-run sites, and more detailed, more platforms where people are really investing money to build them and to provide a really intuitive platform where you can log in and tailor it, and maybe they're scraping odds feeds, and they spent a lot of money on it, versus maybe just a guy setting up a MySpace account or whatever it was back in 2006, and trying to think about Free Serve or whoever it was, and saying I'm a tipster, and he does it in the evenings. A lot of the time these days it's full-time enterprises with big teams. So it's great to be able to review a lot of those platforms because they offer a lot of value.
Yeah, nice. Anthony's back in my phone messages here. He goes, "What's your biggest win, mate? Your biggest loss? Your worst bad beat?" And yeah, maybe just go with those three to start with, mate.
Biggest win. I've had a bunch of 5-figure wins. I don't have not had a 6-figure win or 7-figure win. You know, not quite Anthony's level. The best win was, I was thinking about this earlier because I thought it might come up. Best win. I went away last November with the family, and like we were at Airbnb for like a week in between lockdowns, and it was great. You know, get a bit of time out. And my job was to load the car, and you know, while everyone's getting ready, we're leaving the Airbnb, loading the car, getting it loaded, and then like, are you ready to go? No, I'm not ready to go. And the change in the bit. I've done my car, so I think I'll just place a few bets. I did a whole bunch of racing bets, and then forgot about it. Drove home. You know, chaos. Everyone in the car. Couldn't go into the service station because you know it was all locked down. So I remember eating my bullet burger at the service station with the dogs trying to eat it, and you know, so it's kind of like chaos. Get home, get back, and then I log into my account. Oh, fucking hell, what's going on here? And then all the bets had copped, like, and I had a huge win. I'd totally forgotten about it all day. You know, it's probably when I was driving home or one of the kids was screaming or something like that. I actually all won. I knew nothing about it. You know, stuff like that. Normally you watch every single race and then you see the first few and then you're on tenterhooks. And I'm like, oh, I didn't have a clue. So that was, you know, I don't know if that'll ever happen again, but that was a really good win. That was really enjoyable because most of the time you're kind of watching it with your finger hovering over the trade out button or whatever, or lay button to lock in a profit. So what are the other questions there?
Biggest loss and worst bad beat.
So biggest loss, yeah. I bet a lot of volume rather than high figures, unlike, you know, some of the other guys. So biggest loss that I generally can't think of anything where, you know, I've had like one big bet that's not come in, because often the time it's lots and lots of small bets that all combine and they're just kind of having a bad run. I think I did really badly around the time of the US Masters, and I was like, it was a shot away from winning, you know, another big 5-figure sum or losing high 4 figures. And it was that difference, you know, it's just the worst kind of beat when you're kind of in the lead, and you know, you think you've got it home and hosed, and then everything conspires against you, and the one guy you don't want to win comes through, and that was frustrating. And there's been a few like that where, especially with golf, you know, like on a Sunday evening, you switch off or whatever, and you think you've got it in the bag, and then you log on later or in the morning, and then yeah, it all falls to pieces. So they're always the worst beats, you know, when you're in the lead, and you know, it's just all falls apart like that. So don't like to dwell on them too much, but yeah, generally it's low volume. It's lots of smaller bets that I do. So I never get like the big $5,000 one, you know, one big $5,000 loss on a bet, for example. So
yeah, all right. And he also asks, what's your 5-year plan?
5-year plan, like Starlin.
You're in an interview, mate, so just be careful what you say.
I know. Working for AK Bets, it seems. 5-year plan, yeah. Like, I do want to get into the US space. That's definitely a part of my remit to do that. With one thing or another, in the last 12 to 18 months, it's not been possible with lockdown and all the challenges of that. But that's my plan. All the while scaling up my betting. I'm doing more and more if I can, you know, with exchanges or Asians and things like that, scaling that up, because with those things, and it takes time, you know, you're often making a low ROI. So you need to really build up your bankroll and, you know, get to a point where you can, you know, where 2% is a really high, you know, you're putting a lot of volume through to make 2% really worthwhile. So for me, it's that challenge of continually really building that up, personally with the betting but for SBC, yeah, it's to break into the US side, to really build on the UK stuff and the European stuff, and kind of establish ourselves as, you know, as a really number one resource for people who are sharp bettors, and then to try and see if we can achieve the same for the US market.
Awesome, mate. I'll just give a last call for people to send through their questions. In the meantime, maybe you want to just let people know where they can find SBC, or get in touch with you and all the good stuff.
Yeah, smartbettingclub.com. That's the website. We're on Twitter, SBC, at SBC Info. You can contact me, Pete, at smartbettingclub.com. YouTube, we're trying to build up. There's a lot of interesting stuff on YouTube. We're trying to do some video interviews. You can get them on YouTube, Smart Betting Club. And again, also podcasts. Like I said, we're doing a few of them. We've got about 22, 23 in the can so far. You can listen to them. There's a lot of interviews with people like, trying to get some guests that no one's had on before sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to try and convince some people to come on and trying to organize to get them to come on because, sometimes the people that don't really want to, are busy maybe, or you don't want to reveal too much, but with a bit of coercion sometimes and building a relationship, you can get them on. So yeah, we're trying to get a bit more on the podcast side. So go check them out if you're interested in that.
Yeah, and I highly recommend Pete's podcast, Smart Betting Club podcast. It's been a terrific listen over the past year or however long it's been that you guys have been going. So yeah, highly recommend listening to that, and I concur with your point about getting people to come on the podcast. It's a tiresome task, mate.
Exactly.
Daniel Chill Gaming has asked, how many hours before kickoff do you normally place your bets?
Is that for you, Alex? Is that Trademate?
I mean, mine's no. Let's just go with you, mate. I've mentioned that a million times.
It really depends. It depends on the market, So you don't want to be betting really too much into illiquid markets. It depends where you want to get most of your bets down. If you're betting on the exchange, you're not going to get much down if there's not much money there. But if you're looking to get the majority on a bookmaker, you don't really want to tip the hat by putting a load of money into a liquid market on Betfair. Bookmakers will go, "Oh, right, we'll slash our odds." So it really depends on where you're betting and what the leagues are. But inevitably, if Alex, if your tipster's beating closing line and he's putting forward the odds that you should take, you want to take them earlier, as best you can. But if that's not feasible, then you might have to wait a little bit later. So it's very hard to give a one size fits all question for how many hours before do you place bets, because it depends on the league, the market, the sport. So.
Yeah, I think if you're not using like a software like Trademate, or if you're just betting something because you price something higher than it should be, it's always a bit of a tricky game sometimes to kind of figure out the best times to back it, because if you kind of got to use your own intuitive thinking, don't you think? Like if you think there's the price is just way too big, like almost like they've made a mistake, then you're probably best backing it as soon as possible. But if it's a case where you're maybe not too sure if there's an edge there or not, or maybe you think there's an edge there, but you kind of think the market's going to miss it by the time the game starts, if you get what I mean, then maybe the market will move towards the other side and you can get an even bigger price. It's a bit of game of cat and mouse, I guess. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, what was the question? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess just like if you, I guess generally, let's just say you price something at 2 in odds, but you can get 2.2 now. But do you just race out and grab the 2.2? Or is there cases where you think, I actually don't think the market's going to pick up on what I'm thinking or something like that, and maybe I'll just wait and see if I can get a bigger price?
Well, the approach that I generally take, I'm not the tipster, I'm not the expert. So I would, if that's what I'm being advocated to pick up, then I would grab it. If it's someone I trust or, someone I'm following, inevitably it generally is. So I just take it. Assuming that the tipster's seen the market in question and observed it and said, yeah, go grab the 2.2. Sometimes, yeah, you can find some extra value around and go and snaffle it while you can. It's not too often that happens. The bookmakers like to copy Betfair and then mimic themselves and never like to put their head above the parapet. But when it does, go grab it.
Yeah. Tom Payne says, have you got any more pro punters on the SBC podcast coming up? If so, who?
Yeah, I've just did one. I've done a bunch this week, actually. I got Steve Lewis Hamilton coming back on, who's like a really
Lewis
experienced.
Hamilton.
Yeah, no, Steve Lewis Hamilton. Not. Yeah, I know exactly.
I was like, geez, you guys have you've really built a solid platform there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. God, is it just me? Is F1 really, really boring? I mean, I watched it last week. The first race I've watched, I can't remember where. My wife loves it, and she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're watching it." I was like, "Literally, no one has overtaken anyone this whole race. No one has
Yeah.
overtaken." So
I got into the what's the series called? The Netflix series that they started. The documentary about the F1, and I think it's like one of the best documentaries I've ever watched, and I've loved watching that. And then I think last year I was like, maybe I'll watch a race. This is when I was living in Europe, so it was like, and at a normal time. Now it's like in Australia, it's at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning or something. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll watch this race. I put it on for like a couple of laps. I was like, geez, I mean, it's obviously of it starting. Watching the start is very much, that's good fun, because there's probably going to be a bit of drama. So that's good fun. But yeah, I agree. I love watching the highlights every Monday morning here. But yeah, I don't know about watching the actual full race. That's tough.
Yeah, well, as an Arsenal fan, you want to be watching Formula One. That's probably the best thing to watch on Monday.
Hey,
Sorry,
mate, didn't you watch the big 1-0 win against Norwich?
let's not talk Arsenal here. Let's give you a break from that. But back to the question from Tom. I know we're having a laugh, but we've got Steve Lewis Hamilton, who I've had on previously, and I've got him back on with another guy who he knows. And we're talking like about betting psychology. We're talking about his years in the industry, and just because, and teamwork, because he's been working with other people, just because it's a really important aspect and overlooked aspect. We speak to people and they say, how do you win, and what's your process, and tell us about your biggest win, and that's all often very interesting. But what we don't know is like, what are the biggest challenges you've had, like psychologically? How do you cope with losing? What's the value in teamwork? What's the network you need around you, and those kind of things to kind of get under the skin of what it's like to be a pro punter. And I recorded another one on Friday with Miguel from Winner Odds, Miguel Figueres from Winner Odds, and he's fascinating. He really is. He's a professional punter himself, betting on tennis. So we got into his betting on tennis. Why he got into it, he built an algorithm, artificial intelligence. So he's a very, very clever guy. Built a platform around beating the bookmaker on tennis. He did it on other things earlier in his life, and not surrounding betting. So he's got a real talent for kind of problem solving and working out an edge in certain markets. And he also what's interesting about him is he's also got he's part of the stuff going on in Spain, taking on bookmakers court action. And I referenced it on Twitter earlier this week. Like this. It seems to be a bit of a focal point in Spain. From what I understand, the consumer law there is quite strong, protecting customers. And there is ongoing cases involving, I think, 9 bookmakers. You could only speak about one, Bet365, because the other 8 has got something going on with them. But it's really interesting to learn about why they are being challenged and how him and others have been able to have accounts unrestricted, and where the cases are actually going at the moment. So for those people most people watching this probably have had or worried about account limitations or closures, then it should provide a little bit of inspiration on what someone else is doing on that front.
Yeah, no, that's terrific, mate. Lastly, we've got Dan Smith. He says, any decent stats sites for US horse racing?
Timeform's good for the UK. I don't know about the US. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Dan, mate. Anyway, I think that just about does us. As Pete mentioned before, smartbettingclub.com, SBC info on Twitter. That's right, isn't it?
That's it. At SBC info. Yeah.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, check out the podcast, YouTube channel. Always great stuff from the Smart Betting Club. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks for Pete for coming along today. You've been terrific, insightful as always. And for people who are on the channel for the first time, do all the good stuff, please. Give it a like, give it a subscribe. And we should have, as always, lots of new content coming out over the coming weeks. Next week on Sunday streams, I think I'm going to take the week off. Going to take a nice little Monday morning to myself, or Sunday night for you guys. So won't be back next week, but yeah, sure we'll be back Sundays to follow with all the good stuff. But yeah, thanks again, Pete, and yeah, have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.